The Confessions is a show which has its origins actually in a piece of music by Sir James Macmillan, the Scottish composer, and that piece of music was called The Confessions of Isobel Gowdie, and it focuses on a period in Scottish history where many women, they reckon up to about 2,000, were actually murdered, were actually strangled and burnt at the stake, accused of being witches. There were 3 witch hunts that took place in Scotland, and this particular one, when Isobel Gowdie was tried and convicted in 1662, is what the piece of music focuses on. And I listened to that piece of music a lot through the first lockdown, and it got me exploring and thinking about ideas of witch hunts and why we go after people in society sometimes. What I noticed from reading about the witch hunts in Scotland was that they took place in times of great political and social upheaval. King James I and VI was trying to unite Scotland and England. There was massive reformation happening in the churches with the rejection of Catholicism, the rise of the Calvinists and the Protestant religion, and people looked for scapegoats. It was very convenient for governments and royalty at the time to find scapegoats. King James, of course, commissioned the King James Bible, but he was also interested in demonology and witchcraft. In those days, it was very easy to condemn someone for witchcraft. You just got a group of people to turn against somebody that you didn't like, for somebody that didn't fit your narrative in your local village. And one of those women was Isobel Gowdie, and her confessions have become fascinating reading for historians, and quite shocking at the time. The poor woman was probably suffering from ergot poisoning, which would have poisoned the wheat or the barley in the day, which probably sent her slowly mad, having a lot of hallucinations about doing things with the devil and casting spells on people, and ultimately being put to death. This show is an allegory for that. It's an allegory for modern day witch hunts. And one of the things in my background and in my upbringing is I don't like censorship. I don't like cancel culture. What's happening at this time of social upheaval is something truly fascinating. We are regressing as a human race. There is no longer nuance between people. There's just black and white, polar opposition. It's very easy to say the wrong thing, a counter-narrative, and be cancelled forever. And in that sense, there is a modern-day witch hunt taking place at the moment. Who would have thought in our generation that the Supreme Court of the United States would have made a ruling against Roe versus Wade? I mean, one of the pillars of liberal democracy was taken away from us on an agenda, on a cancel culture agenda. So who would have thought we were facing similar issues around witch hunts and political agendas and the search for truth some 350 years later? And that's what I asked the artists to respond to for the Confessions show here at Silo 6. Each of the artists, the 6 artists, were given a silo to do a piece in. And I wanted them in particular to address issues around witch hunts and issues around the cancellation of culture or of people. To me, censorship has no place in the arts. It's a hill I will die on to the day I die. Because when you deny the right for people to experience or see something, that terrifies me. In the first silo, what's really lovely is Inga Fillory begins and ends the journey in the silo. She's collected furniture which looks like it may sit in a 17th century Scottish house, and then she has burnt it. So you arrive in the silo knowing that an event has taken place with this large kind of munted pile of burnt furniture. And she asks a lot of questions there, a lot of questions around capitalism and its uses, as well as obviously setting the stage for what happens next when you enter Silo 2. Silo 2 is Rebecca Wallace. I think she's one of the most fascinating painters working in New Zealand today. And she created these magnificent tall paintings that fit in the silo. Fortunately for us, or unfortunately, this silo leaks. So we have these wonderful pools of water on the floor, which just accentuate these paintings. They are electrifying in their presence. The tension emanates from these works as soon as you enter the silo. And of course, Rebecca's work talks a lot about abjection. It talks a lot about the body and being out of the body and ideas of self and other. So it's a terrific beginning of the journey as you move through into Silo 3. Silo 3 is one of our younger artists, Rebecca Hazard, known for her large meat paintings. And what Rebecca is asking us to explore here is, again, ideas of the body and ideas of objectification. You know, we're okay to say we love animals, and yet we eat them for tea most nights of the week. You know, she's very interested in that sort of contrast about how do you get to a place where it's okay to disenfranchise flesh from a body or a soul, much as you would do for one of those poor women in 1660, where you were condemning them to be burnt at the stake, a truly horrific death. What goes on through your mind at a stage where you can condemn somebody to die like that? And I often think those paintings really accentuate that issue. In Silo 4, we have a wonderful film work by a young artist called Amadeo Grossman. Amadeo is in his final year of his Bachelor of Fine Arts down in Massey. And that was a bit of a punt, actually. I saw some of Amadeo's work, gave him the piece of music, and I said, look, let this inspire your thinking. He's a digital native. These things are collected and cut and pasted in a very lo-fi way from his experience as a young man surfing the internet. You know, it sort of feels like a counter-narrative in itself, and yet it works beautifully as a visual backdrop for the other works in the show. It's a terrific piece of film, which leads us then into Silo 5 and Patricia Piccinini's seminal work, Prone, from 2011. Prone is a chimera. Prone is a human dog bat hybrid, and it does two things. It immediately kind of taps into your empathetic side because you see this baby in this tall, kind of freezing cold cavern, and your first instinct, of course, is protection. And the closer you get, when you see the bat forms, when you see his posture as a dog, it starts to freak you out slightly. So you have this continual tension between empathy and being repelled by this creature, which looks very much alive. And I guess the lesson here is one of otherness and embracing otherness. When you lack otherness, you put people to death because they're not you. When you lack ideas of the inability to see life through somebody else's experience or see life through somebody else's eyes, we're in trouble as a human race when our empathy goes that far. And we see examples of it time after time after time in our modern lives. So it's a very, very important and key work in the show. As the journey through the silos goes, I wanted to have an uplifting moment at the end of it. Otherwise, it all gets a bit gloomy and depressing. So I thought, well, Monique Lacey will commission her to do a very large-scale sculptural work. And the beautiful thing about that is it's a very calm and reflective piece. It almost feels like the show is resolved at that point. There is some redemption. There's an ascension taking place and a time for us to reflect on what we've seen. And it's quite a large-scale work, and it's the only piece in that silo, and I think it does a beautiful job as you then come back through to Inga's installation, which, as I say, acts as a beginning and an end to this show. We're really grateful to Eke Panaku Developments here in Auckland, because they actually offered us the site of Silo 6 for the show, and it's like this industrial cathedral. It's probably the height of a cathedral as well. It's a really special space. There's nothing like this in Auckland, and it fits the premise for this show absolutely beautifully. The Confessions is at Silo 6 each day, 12 to 6 p.m. until Saturday, the 23rd of July, and we look forward to welcoming you here.